To begin, remove the front wheel from the vehicle. Remove the nut holding the end link and sensor line to the end link tab on the strut body. Pull the brake line away from the strut body to detach the line from the strut bracket. Remove the single bolt holding the lower portion of the strut into the hub's pinch mount. Insert the Raceland strut spreader tool into the backside of the pinch mount. Once the spreader tool is rotated properly, it will spread the hub enough for the hub to slide off the strut. Under the hood, remove the 3 bolts holding the top mount to the shock tower, and the suspension is now free and can be removed from the vehicle. Remove the top nut holding the OEM top mount to the suspension. Once the top mount and bearing are removed from the factory suspension, place the Raceland upper spring seat onto the coilover spring, place the top mount and bearing onto the strut, and then tighten with the supplied nut. Place the coilover into the wheel well and align the top mount studs into their position on the shock tower. Reinstall the 3 top nuts holding the strut mount to the shock tower. Lift the hub onto the lower portion of the coilover and secure with the factory pinch bolt. Push the brake line onto the bracket on the side of the coilover body. Position the end link onto the end link tab. Slide the sensor line bracket onto the end link and secure with the factory nut. You can now reinstall the front wheel as the installation for this corner is complete. To begin the rear, remove the wheel from the vehicle. Remove the bolt holding the lower shock bushing to the hub. Remove the bolt holding the lower control arm to the hub. You will now be able to pull down on the control arm to begin spring removal. Detach the sway bar from the control arm by removing the bolt and pulling out the end link. You can now pull down on the control arm and remove the spring from the spring seat. Pull back the side carpet in the trunk and lift any foam insulation covering the shock tower. Remove the nut from the shock piston. Pull the upper strut bushing off the shock, and the shock can now be removed from the vehicle. Transfer the lower strut bushing and bump stop onto the Raceland shock. Place the shock into position in the shock tower. Place the upper strut bushing onto the shock and secure with the supplied nut. You can now place the foam insulation and carpet back into normal position. With the spring adjuster on top of the spring, place the coilover spring onto the spring seat and control arm. Make sure the rubber spring seat is still installed on the control arm. Reinstall the bolt holding the lower control arm to the hub. Secure the lower shock bushing to the hub with the factory hardware. Place the end link bushings onto the sway bar and reattach the sway bar to the lower control arm. You can now reinstall the rear wheel, and the installation for this corner is complete.